I mean, it's fine. It's fine. If you have the
Yeah.
time to, if you have the time, it's
No,
fine.
we're good because my daughter's not here. She's with my mom. She knows I'm doing this, so we're good.
Oh, no kid duties out of the box. It's lit.
Yeah.
Um, all right. So let's start over.
Okay.
So hopefully this should be much quicker because I like to word vomit from time to time.
Hmm.
But we obviously know each other from social media. I was explaining previously when I thought it was recording, but it clearly wasn't. I was explaining previously that we know each other from social media, and I felt as though we had dialogue here and there. And then eventually it reached a point where I moved to Jersey and I was like, yo, like, this is somebody I know who lives in Jersey. Maybe I should establish, a better sort of connection and some level of friendship here because moving to Jersey and experiencing new people, learning more about the area, whatever the case is. With that being said, let's start off with you telling me about growing up in Jersey and how that experience was for you.
Yes, growing up in Jersey, I was born and raised in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. It's a small little community by the harbor where a lot of Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Salvadorians, Mexicans, a lot of Spanish people just migrate there. And I went there to their schools, and then I moved out of there in like eighth grade to a more suburban area where it was a lot more calmer, where I graduated high school and maintained most of my friendships still from at least the Woodbridge area.
Nice, nice. It's interesting because you ended it off with maintaining friendship. It's interesting. I was having a conversation with somebody of like how many friendships or connections I've removed from my life because I feel as though in some facet, keeping those friendships could possibly stunt your growth because there's just certain people, they're not from the next stage in life, they're not really looking at it from the standpoint of like, okay, I got to do X amount of things because I have certain things I want to achieve. It's kind of like they're repeating the same cycle. So it's interesting of like still having some of those friends because those are hard. Those are lifelong friendships are definitely hard in that sort of aspect. So also, with you mentioning that area is interesting to me. Like, and I'm sure there's some sort of research that could be done to pinpoint this. But it's interesting to me how like people from developing countries will like pinpoint to specific areas in America that they'll live in. So it's like if people talk about like Brooklyn, there's parts of Brooklyn where it's predominantly Caribbean immigrants. And it's like, of all the places in the entire world, some way, somehow,
The
this
East
was the spot.
Coast.
Yeah, it was like this was the spot that everybody was going to go to. Or even Queens, another area where there's a plethora of different Spanish speaking immigrants go to. And it's like, what are the odds? And I be having these thoughts randomly at times as well of like, my parents left Haiti and made a life for themselves. Not even. My father left first and was living in Canada. So there's a chance there is a whole separate timeline where I could have grown up in Montreal instead of
Wow.
Brooklyn, New York.
I can
And
see
I would have
you
been
fitting right in, honestly.
let me not be disrespectful. I haven't been in Montreal. I haven't been in Montreal in a minute. So who's to say whether what kind of place it is now? But it's just interesting to me. Like I think about stuff like that of like I would have been a completely different person had I grown up in Canada and Montreal specifically versus growing up in Brooklyn. Like my whole identity is because I am a New Yorker. Like so much of my decision making, how I rationalize things is because of my experiences in New York. So to think that there was a
Sorry.
to think that there was a possibility at some point in time that I could have been a Canadian is kind of nuts. Absolutely nuts. Speaking French? Nah, I don't got that in me. Yeah, I ain't got that in me. But
Mm,
we spoke prior to this. You identify as Afro-Latina. So
yes.
tell me, what does that mean to you? Especially when we're talking about people from Puerto Rico or Dominican Republic and other Spanish-speaking countries. There's batches of them who have a hard time of like identifying the blackness within their own community and sometimes within their own family. And we know how much colorism plays a factor. We know how much white oppression plays a factor. So talk to me a little bit about like what it means to you being a Afro-Latina.
For me, identifying as a Afro-Latina is very important to me because I don't want to shame my roots. So it's like when it comes to my hair, my skin, my features, I'm not
Hmm.
like there's people who just separate themselves completely from the idea of saying I'm black. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm proud of having a big nose. I'm proud of having kinky curly hair. I'm proud of being melanin. Like it feels good to be cultured, like there's people who just don't have any rhythm, any sauce into their lifestyle. And it's just
Talk
like,
about it.
you
Talk
know,
about it.
I would hate to be that, and it's growing up knowing that you're more than just salsa or merengue or bachata or dembow. It's like I have more to myself, to my DNA than, just the normal Dominican aesthetic,
Was there any point in your life where you made that distinction for yourself, or was there anything that happened or transpired that made you like, okay, I'm embracing this. Like this is who I am. I'm not even if you may have had practices before
hmm
and you felt this way, but it's like no, this is what I'm going to identify as, and this is what if people ask me, I'm going to say it. And I'm going to say it proudly.
I think for me, it was when I used to be around my family and they used to just blast the music that they love, So it's just like hardcore Spanish, whatever genre it was in the Spanish, it was that. And I just like never really took the time to like want to learn the lyrics or get into like the artists. I wasn't like a fan of Romeo Santos. I mean, I listened to Aventura, that's like a Spanish, really popular boy group.
You've disappointed me. If there's one thing I know about the Dominicans, they love
I'm telling you, like I was not a fangirl of like the normal, Spanish artists. So that's when I knew I'm like, if anything, not for nothing. Growing up before I really got into like hip hop and R&B and all of that, I was more of like a reggaeton listener. That's like the more Puerto Rican side of Spanish. And so, like, I used to listen to Zion Lennox and Hakeem Y. Like, that is when I feel like I started to kind of just set my own identity and be like, okay, yeah, this is not what I associate myself with as far as like what I
mm.
like. So I'm gonna keep, dabbling into things that I like listening and styling myself in ways that are comfortable for me.
Got you, got you, got you. So this it's weird asking you these questions because we had a technical issue and like doing this all over again. Anyways, I'm gonna ask anyways. But like, because I already know your answer. But like, was there a form of separation for you in regards to Black culture in comparison to your Dominican heritage? And was there anything specifically like from Black culture that like really like spoke to you or like drew you in of like, wow, this is dope, this is cool, this is amazing. I'm too young to understand what's going on, but like I'm so into this.
I think for me, I was more accepted with the Black community. And
Mm,
growing up, even I could recall the friends that I've had like growing up and then transitioning to adolescent years, comparing the friendships and who I still connect with till this day. Like I can call and be like, hey, let's go to Houston for the weekend, like those are my Black girlfriends, And so I feel like the Spanish girls were meaner and the Black girls, they were just really cool. Like they would invite me to parties. I would go, and that's when I like got introduced to like Black club music and just like was in the scene, and I liked it because it's like, well, my Spanish girlfriends never invited me to their parties, like
mm.
we would see each other in school and we would hang out and hey, help each other with homework and shit, but it was never like outside of the educational realm. And maybe it was because they seen that I was different, because I expressed myself differently. I wasn't the quote unquote Dominican girl that they were, because I don't want to say their names because I still follow some of these girls. I love, I'm a
You
lover
you
girl.
about to get some you about to get some DMs like, yo, you talking about me?
like shout out to the Dominican girls that I did grow up with and I called best friends, and I still have some Dominican girlfriends that I cherish. But
Mm-hmm.
growing up, my experience as a Dominican girl who identified herself as Afro-Latina subconsciously and unconsciously sometimes, didn't get appreciated for that. It was like, well, she's different. I don't like her because she's trying to be somebody she's not, because I was just like very proud, of anything that I associated myself with. So it was a lot of tussling too. A lot of tussling.
I can see that because I've heard some somewhat similar sort of sentiments from some of my other women friends. What I was gonna ask you, did you also possibly have also felt that from like the older generation as well? Like I know for a lot of like Spanish speaking, some of our friends who have Spanish speaking roots, when they go back to the island, they get treated a certain way because of like, oh, you not really Puerto Rican, like you from New York, so you different, or you not really Dominican because you from Jersey, so you different, like you not really, like yeah, you speak it, but you don't, it don't roll off the tongue the same way as a native would. So did you
Mhm.
face any of that as well, or not really?
Well, the last time I went to Dominican Republic was in 2013. So I was like,
It's been some time. It's
yeah,
been
I
some
need to
time.
visit. I'm sure that if I go over there now, I would probably get a little bit of shade. Like, I'm not even gonna lie, because I do speak Spanish, but for them it's like, oh, she's American. As soon as I talk speaking Spanish, it's like, oh, she's not from
Right,
here. We know she's
right.
from New York. And so, I just got to move a little carefully. Luckily, when I'm out there, my family, they're from the capital. So, like, it's like semi hood out there. So I'm a little good out there in the streets, but
Good to know.
um,
Good to know.
and I have like I'm also from La Vega, so that's like Cibañera. I think that's what they call us. It's like a country girl. So I have a little bit of country, but I
Oh,
also have a little
okay,
bit of
okay.
a city girl when it comes to Dominican Republic.
She's, ladies and gentlemen, she's versatile.
Yes.
That's what she's explaining to y'all. Because once you started speaking Spanish, I was starting to get lost. Like, you call me, what you call me? But
Yeah.
that's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, because I've just heard so many different stories. I'm trying to think, like, is there, I feel like there is some sort of like equivalent to it from like other countries as well. Because I'm trying to think of like things I've heard, with my Haitian family, and like definitely people from Haiti definitely feel a way about people who leave and now live in the States, and like their sort of viewpoint and how things, how they see things are completely skewed in that regard as well.
Mm.
So it don't matter where you from. There's some sort of hate from somewhere. It's crazy how that's like a consistent thing across the board. But with that being said, like talk about the balance of trying to find acceptance, because I've also heard it as well of like, if you're somebody who's Puerto Rican or Dominican, is like your Puerto Rican or Dominican family may not accept you enough because of whatever it is that you align with. And then even though you may accept or celebrate black culture as well, it's like, well, you're not really black, so you different too at the same end. So talk
Right.
about like trying to find that balance, or like how does that impact you as a young person of like, look, I'm just trying to be in social spaces that accept me for who I am, and no matter where I go, I run into some sort of roadblock.
Right. Oddly enough, it's so crazy because, people are just very shallow sometimes. So they see me and people they want to like pinpoint, they want to be right. So they want to guess what you are. And it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
used to get like that I was Indian, because I have like a little birthmark in the middle of my forehead.
Ah.
Yeah, so it's like I was either Indian or I was Puerto Rican. I was never Dominican. I was black before I was Dominican, but I was Puerto Rican before I was Dominican, as far as guessing. But I feel like, what was your question again? I kind of
Sorry.
forgot in the middle of like trying to answer
That happens to me all the time of like, I'll start rambling and then I'm like, wait, I don't even know if I'm answering this person's question.
it.
But the question was like, try to find acceptance and balance between the two different groups where
Hmm.
you're not Spanish enough, but then at the same time, you're not black enough.
So oddly enough, and my family out here would probably disagree, but I feel like I had a closer relationship with my family who was from DR versus my cousins and my aunts and uncles who were obviously they migrated here, had children here, and raised everyone here. I felt
Hmm.
like I didn't really connect with them a lot. And so, they're first generation uh citizens, and so they've experienced, they're like 5, 10 plus years older than me. Obviously, like we don't really have a lot in common if you're 10 plus older than me. But
Right.
at the same time, it's like, damn, like I'm your little cousin. Like, what's up? Like, can we be cool? Can we be down? And it's like, it was always like I don't know. It was always like a
A weird
disconnect.
energy.
Yeah, like a weird energy. At least for me in my experience. And so I always felt like I connected and bonded more with my Dominican family who's still there in DR. There's only like one of them who moved out here and who became a citizen. Um, and yeah, like I don't know. That's one, example of how I felt like an imbalance or um, that I wasn't accepted. As far as like finding the balance within friendships, it's kind of hard because I feel like I've never been the type to like have a hard time making friends,
Hmm.
but as I grow up and as I like weeded out what I call friends and who I call a friend, it's just for me, it's like, damn, like, what that meme where it's like, I know I healed because I don't have nobody around me no more. And it's like, damn, like, is that what I'm experiencing? Because it's literally, it feels like I don't have a lot of people around me, but I don't want to also say that and then people blow me up like, what do you mean? We were just hanging out last week. It's like, no,
Right.
but it's just
Right.
like, everyday conversations, bonds. Like since COVID, I can say that a lot has changed. And my viewpoint on what a friend means to me has also changed. And you may not fit in that title,
Speak
but
on it.
shoot,
Let them
hey.
know, yo. Let them know. Listen, there's a few people that I would have never thought I've had to remove from my life, or people who have stepped away. Like, I think that's one of the clear examples of like, oh, you're getting older, of because you'll start to realize like the type of connections and the type of people that you used to associate yourself with tend to change over time. And it's like, yo, I would have never thought you and I would not be speaking or
Mm,
on bad terms. And well, I don't even say bad terms because I don't carry negative energy towards anybody, but it's interesting how that dynamic evolves over time because you don't necessarily do it in your 20s like that. But once you
mm-mm.
hit 30, it's like, my time is precious. I could only be around people who are to bring positive energy around me. If you bring in anything negative, I can't keep you around in that sort of regard.
Right.
So
And not even
did
just,
you
sorry to interrupt, not even just
no, go
like
ahead.
negative and positive people, but just like stagnant people, like people who just like
Mm,
refuse to change. Like even if it's just like their hairstyle or their clothing, it's like you're just the same person from what I knew back when. And it's like, if you think that I'm that same person from the era that you're still in,
mm-hmm.
then we don't have anything to discuss really. We don't really have anything
Right.
to really bounce off each other. And it's like, all right, well then I can't really keep in contact
Right.
with you.
Because I've outgrown you, because my perspective and the things that I want out of life are so far removed from whatever it is that you got going on. It's like, yo, I'm cool. Like, I'm good. Like, I just rather not. Like, I'm not judging you. I'm not
Right.
saying I'm better than you as a
No.
person. I'm just saying the things that matter to me and the things that I want to prioritize moving forward don't align with whatever it is you got going on. So it's like, I'd rather not. Um, so have you ever been put in a position where you've had to hold maybe family members or peers accountable in terms of how they view people and how they, put certain people in a box and things of that nature? Uh, I know for myself of like something that I've have thought about over the last few years, especially coming out of COVID and all the social injustice that was happening there. Of like, if I am going to possibly date somebody, who is Puerto Rican or Dominican or whatever, like what how do you identify yourself, and like how does your family dynamic operate? Like I couldn't be around somebody who views black people a certain way, which is a big reason why I will never ever date a white woman. That's just not my bag, not my ministry. But yeah, like talk to me about whether you've ever been kind of put in those sorts of scenarios, whether it's the colorism aspect or racist aspect, anti-black sort of rhetoric. Like,
Yeah.
talk to me, talk to me.
I feel like definitely, like even when it comes to slurs, I feel like there's something inside of me, and it's always been that way, where I get so bothered
Mm-hmm.
by the slurs that they have towards a black person. Like I don't want to repeat them, but there
Right.
are a couple, and I've definitely had to step in and be like, I don't like that. Don't say that in front of me. I have a black daughter, and I don't think that that's cool. Even before I had a daughter, I just always was the type, even the word bitch. Like I hate when people be like, bitch,
Interesting.
bitch.
Interesting. So
Ooh,
you
don't call
don't
me
use that.
bitch.
You don't use that verbiage with your friends.
No. Mm-mm. I've had to
Oh,
correct my friends all the time because I don't like that. Like, I feel like we're queens, and like it sounds cute on the song, when you're in the mood, when you have a couple shots going, and you're just like, yeah, whatever, whatever. But in everyday verbiage, like, no, we're not doing that. At least not around me. But yeah, like slurs, that's one thing.
at any point, have you ever also felt fetishized in that facet of like a lot of black men prefer to date women from Latinx communities, and like they'll do the comparison between Latinx women. It's like, oh, she's in comparison to black women. It's like, oh, Spanish women are more feisty, or they're more passionate lovers, and all this other bullshit. Like, have you ever had to check a guy or felt like that energy of like, why are you on me like this? Like,
Mm,
there's something different. Like, this isn't no natural sort of, oh, you think I'm attractive or whatever. Like, you putting me on some sort of like pedestal for some odd reason. Like, have you
right.
ever had to check anybody for that as well?
Yes, and like oddly enough, I feel like Spanish men, they just like don't approach me at all. Like if anything, it's mostly black men who approach me and who are like trying to pursue or who have pursued and achieved. I would say yes to the black men. Have I felt like overly sexualized by like black men? Yes. I feel like there is a thing that I can say, at least with my experience, that it's more of a like just like a fantasy, like you said, like fetishizing, like, oh, she's Dominican and she's thick, and she's, I don't know, like I don't want to toot my own horn, but it's just like I definitely feel that as well, for sure.
Interesting. That's interesting with you. And you told me this before. I completely forgot that. But you told me this before about like Spanish men don't typically pursue you. But it's weird because I also feel like, and it happens with every ethnic group, whether you're from certain parts of Africa, if you're from Haiti, if you're from Jamaica, DR, it don't matter. You'll have certain family members or your parents who are like, oh yeah, when you start dating, I would prefer you to date somebody of the similar background.
Mm.
And I feel like, and I could be wrong, this could just be me being ignorant here. I feel like that's also a big thing with Spanish men or men, Puerto Rican men or Dominican men.
I put the volume down and it's still freaking high as shit. I don't know.
You're fired. But I feel like this happened. I feel like I'm trying to think, I think I only have one good friend that is Latinx. But
Hmm.
like I rarely see like Dominican men or Spanish men date outside of their race. So the
Hmm.
fact that you haven't necessarily been pursued by any of them is like kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, I just feel like I was saying earlier, when a man or when a person sees me, they don't know that I'm Spanish. So sometimes I'll be at like ShopRite or Whole Foods, and somebody will be talking shit in Spanish to me, and I'm just I do my business, and then I'll hit them with the oh, ¿cómo estás? Or, oh, todo bien? Or I'll say something like friendly
What
so that they
what is the
know.
wild what is the wildest thing you've heard that somebody said about you in another language, in
Oh my
Spanish,
God. I remember
if you
one
can
day
remember?
I was with like some people. Like it was just more, it was a lot of us. And there was like a marijuana stench in the air, right? And so the lady, it was a host. We were at a restaurant, we were waiting to be seated, and she was like, "Oh, apestan," and that means like they stink. And when she said that, I was just like, I knew automatically because like the people we were with, obviously they were like smoking weed or whatever, and that smell is not for everybody. Not everybody likes that smell, and I get it. And I didn't, take it personal because it's like we did fucking smell like it. I don't
Yeah.
smoke weed. If my employer sees this, it was not me.
I'll edit it out if need be.
But yeah, like that was one thing that I had to like. I know she did not just say that we stink in
Daring.
Spanish.
People be bold and daring. But you mentioned it a little bit. You're obviously a mom. Shout out to all the moms out here. Shout out to my mom because I think Mother's Day is right around the corner. So shout out to y'all. Y'all do a selfless job that doesn't get appreciated enough. I know everybody that knows me knows I am opting out of being a parent. So kudos to y'all that's doing it because I ain't got it in me. I ain't built like that. I ain't built like that. I like spending my money recklessly and only being responsible for myself.
Yeah, and we need
Um,
we need more people like that, and also to like put action into that and like avoid those
we also
situations.
need people to use contraception. Like
Right.
that would probably, that.
That would cut
I,
off a lot of
listen, I'm not a
unwanted.
scientist. I'm not a scientist here, but I feel like that might work. I don't know.
I
I don't
think
know.
so.
Just throwing a hunch. Just throwing a hunch.
This is not a
In my
Trojan
mind,
ad or anything.
yeah, 2 + 2 = 4 in this scenario. I feel. Oh, well, I know the root of this question that I have for you is maybe I think it was in the past week you sent me a link to go vote for you on like this super mom sort of
Giveaway.
campaign, yeah, giveaway where whoever wins they'll win some money or whatever. But I remember reading it and you said something and I'm paraphrasing, so please correct me if I'm incorrect.
Mhm.
But I remember reading it and you said something along the lines of like, while I wasn't necessarily prepared at the time to be a mother because it wasn't necessarily planned, this was an opportunity for me to give love or pour love into my child that I didn't necessarily receive all the way when I was a child. So with that being said, like, how do you view motherhood for yourself in comparison to how you were raised?
First and foremost, I love my mother. I think she did a great job. I
Not
think
you
she's
not you cleaning
amazing.
it up. Not you. She's not gonna hear this.
She might. She been like low key. Like I feel like my parents when they first see that I was podcasting, they were so surprised because they were like, "What? Like you have a whole show on YouTube and all these things?" And
Oh
I'm like,
yeah,
"Yeah."
yeah, yeah. I don't send my parents links to nothing. Nope. I don't need no elongated speeches or conversations about nothing. Mm-mm.
Right.
I had all those talks when I was 15. I ain't trying to hear that shit right now.
But I just feel like the times they were different. I was born 1994, and so I was raised in the 90s. And just my mother seeing what she had to go through and what she thought she had to endure, and like just comparing how I took my initiative in becoming a mother. Like I was like, I don't want to deal with a man. He ain't got to deal with me either. I got my own place, like I got my own career. I didn't have to like depend on anybody's financial situation. Thank God. And so I can never be all that she was, even when I felt like it wasn't enough, because I'm
Right.
an emotional person. I'm very sensitive. I'm in my feelings, I'm a Pisces. So I'm like just very like daydreamy. So for me, I might have gotten the attention that she, gave me, but for me, it should have been more. I felt like a lot of situations that I had to get myself out of or I got myself in, was because they weren't present enough. I had too much
Hmm.
free time. So I had some time to explore and experiment, and things happen when you explore and experiment. So if there's
Right.
one thing, it's like being present and like not feeling bad for moments like right now that I'm taking to do this interview, because it's like something that I like to do and something that, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if your mom does hear this, she could listen to me right now. I think when we're talking about millennials and their relationship with their baby boomer parents, I think when we acknowledge some of the, how can I say this? Not pitfalls, but some of the unfortunate happenings in our childhood, is not to say, hey, you were a bad parent, you dropped the ball. It's you did the best possible job that you could have with the knowledge that you had at that time. And I'm just now, as a full blown adult, recognizing like, oh, there were other aspects to raising me that could also been cultivated. I think especially when you're talking about immigrant families, there's like this survival mode sort of instinct that they kind of have where it's like, look, I'm busting my ass working a job that's probably not paying me well to figure this stuff out at the same time that I'm raising someone. Like, your only job, I'm already providing you food, clothes on your back, and shelter. Your only job is to get good grades and make something of yourself. While that is true, we are very much aware of how much of an emotional aspect it takes to raise a child. I think something that baby boomers have never realized, even up to this point, of like, yes, you're a kid, but you're a human being first. So there are a bunch of emotions, experiences, thoughts that I have even as a child that I need to reconcile with. And the only person I should be reconciling that with is the adult in the room, which is my parent. So I think a lot of times they only look at it as, well, I gave you the basic resources, so all that other stuff you shouldn't need to worry about. And it's not true. Like, I have emotions, I have experiences as a child, I have doubt, I have all these range of things. I may be too young to recognize it or understand it, but it's still valid. So I think a lot of parents from that generation, they look at it as like, well, I gave you more than what I had. You got running water every day, you got electricity every day, you have all these things, food, you have all these things that weren't necessarily available to me on a day-to-day basis. So you should be all right. And it's like, no, it's way deeper than that. We're human
Mhm.
beings, we're much more complex. So when you have millennials and whoever like shout and mention like, yo, while you did the best possible job, there were ways that you could have done things differently.
Mhm.
And so it's not really like pointing the finger like, oh, you dropped the ball, like you could have did better. Like, yeah, everybody could do better. We're not perfect. There's no manual for this stuff. Not only are you raising a child, the world around you evolves. When your mom had you, or when my parents had me, they wasn't thinking that the internet was going to be readily available to everybody. They wasn't thinking you could fucking order a car service from the comfort of your mobile device and get from point A to point B. Like, none of these things
Right.
were existing. Like, it was literally just, like trying to figure out how to make ends meet on a day-to-day basis. So we're not necessarily pointing the finger at them. It's just like there are aspects that should have been nurtured at the same time. And it's not you drop the ball. It's more so like, hey, there were opportunities. There were opportunities.
Mhm.
So that leads into my next question of like, at what point did you and how did you or have you like sort of reconciled that? Because I think a lot of millennials have to reach a point where you reconcile with the things and teachings from your childhood. I think I read somewhere like your adulthood is essentially you unlearning all of the behaviors from your childhood. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And if you're unable to reconcile that, you are going to have some level of trauma, and then that in turn is going to create situations where you may not take the proper approach, or you may have bad decisions making because you haven't reconciled from your past. So have you reconciled with that? And like, at what point did you make like that sort of closure?
I feel like I have, and I'm actively still, because for me, once I left the nest, it was like, oh, well, now I can, really get to know myself and explore and, just figure myself out outside of, living under my mother's roof. And then once I became a mom, it was like, oh shit, like now I need now I need you more, because it's like I never done this, you've done this, and I have to
Mm-hmm.
work, and I need someone that I can trust around my kid, because growing up it was I was around and left with adults who took advantage, and who were very just like not great humans. And so I just never, for me, wanted that experience for my child. And, it was having a lot of those conversations. It was like saying, well, like accepting apologies from adults that I will never hear, till this day. And like journaling and talking to a therapist and talking to my siblings about it, and like just revisiting those moments with my mother, and
Mm-hmm.
saying, well, these are the things that unfortunately happened, but they don't define me, and they're not going to. And I'm doing better, I'm doing good for that to have happened, or whatever.
That's what's up. I'm glad you were able to find like healthy ways to kind of like reconcile that, and then also being able to identify like this isn't like something you just fix and you just turn a switch. Like it's a process. Not only as you grow, as you become older and you have more experiences, also with your daughter, like the things that she experiences, like the things that you may have dealt with as a child, she may not necessarily deal with that. She's dealing with different aspects. Like I couldn't imagine, now that I think about it, I couldn't imagine growing up with social media at the age that I was, and like some of the things that I had to reconcile as an individual. Like now you add this huge big thing where you have access to the entire world, and we see all the like the online bullying, or like the, I forget the proper term for this, but like the leak of nudes and all this. These aren't
Revenge
things,
porn.
and yes, thank you. Revenge porn. It's like these aren't things I had to experience. So I
Right.
could only imagine like, okay, how do I reconcile or continually grow as an individual, but then also continually grow as a mother, and how I could possibly aid my own daughter and her journey and her path in life. Like it's good that you're able to do both things of like having some level of peace, but then recognizing that there's still more work to be done, and there's always going to be work done.
And I think
Um,
that the main thing for me is that I wanted the environment to be different, and so with growing up in a predominantly Spanish environment, I knew like, all right, well, something about that isn't good, because you put a lot of the same people together, and it could get real good, or it could get real crazy, So
mhm.
that was the one thing that I'm like, I know that when I have a child, even, whatever circumstance it is, I'm gonna make sure that she's not growing up in the same kind of environment. So like that was one step I took into like making sure that it wasn't going to be a cycle repeated. But generational curses, they're in our DNA sometimes, so there's certain things that will come up, and you're like, oh shit, like I gotta fix that, or I gotta, watch that closely.
Mhm. Yeah, that's good. That self awareness is important. With that being said, yo, I've been segueing like a yo. I'm good. I'm good at this. With that being said, I will be honest, because I'm like a. I don't know if I even shared this on my show thus far, but I'm partially in the process of like being a life coach. So like, and I've had a plethora of conversations with various people, even my own therapist. Like sometimes we'll even talk about like my friends and their experiences of like, this is what I told this person. Like, what do you think about this? Yeah, and I say that to say, when I read that quote that I mentioned earlier of like, creating a love and foundation for your child that you didn't necessarily have all the way in your own childhood, and make me think like how that could potentially be a red flag. And maybe, and obviously you answer this, but in the experiences that I've had or I've seen with other people, when I see that, it's like, okay, while it's not necessarily a negative, if you don't place that love in a proper manner, it could possibly be a negative. And that's usually, and maybe not be in your case, because that's usually more so in the dynamic of mother to son, of like the child's father is probably not around. So all this love that I was supposed to give my partner, I'm now pouring into my son. And now I'm creating somebody who's growing up in an unideal sort of circumstance. Or like, I hate when you'll see like, oh yeah, he's the man of the house. And it's like, he's two. Like,
Right.
man, where? Or like, oh, that's my little boyfriend. Or it's like, this
Yeah, it's
is
weird.
very unhealthy, very toxic. And it's
The
because,
king.
yeah, it's because you have this love that you want to give. You're not giving it to yourself. You don't have a partner that you can give it to. So you're now pouring it into this child and making this child have expectations that they're not supposed to have, because children are supposed to give you unconditional love. Have you ever had that sort of like revelation at all, or is it something that doesn't even happen at all because you I don't want to say reconcile it, or maybe it doesn't exist for you, like it hasn't come across your mind in any capacity.
I feel like I was just saying to myself, like, it's so when you're a woman and you have a daughter, like, you just kind of like you go through like this transition that it's unheard of. You know, like when you're a mom, when you're a woman and you have a son, you know, it's different. You know, even when I speak to like girls that have boys that are boy moms and girl moms, like the experience is different. At the end of the day, they're both children. You know, like, and
Mm-hmm.
so um when it comes to the love, I feel like you can never really overly love, and they were supposed to love and we're supposed to show kids love. And I think I have a good balance when it comes to like being serious or being stern and then being the loving mother, who's going to be there at any moment at a time. Like, for example, yesterday we went out to eat to a restaurant and I was like, okay, well, you can order from the kids menu, select a main, and you select the side, just one. And she was like, oh, but I want two sides. And I'm like, well, you're not going to have two sides. You're going to have one. So you choose one. And, I was stern
Mm-hmm.
about that. You have to create these boundaries because if not, you're just going to create a monster who's going to be spoiled and think that she can have everything on the menu. And I even saw her things like, there's kids in the other side of the world who can't have dinner with their family. Like there's wars happening. Like I taught my 4-year-old this because it's important, and I think that they need to know. And if not you, then who?
Hmm.
I'm really open with my daughter. I tell her a lot, and she knows a lot.
Interesting. Because I have all these thoughts as someone who refuses to procreate, but it's interesting that you share that with her, because I also feel like, is there something to be said about people who want to protect the innocence of their child? Like, because once that's gone, like they're a completely different person. Like once that's broken, that's complete. And maybe she's still too young to even grasp that concept. So maybe you sharing that information doesn't have an impact on her. But like, do you second guess any of that sort of behavior of like being so open with her? Because once that innocence is gone, you have no say in terms of how will she react. Like,
Yeah,
how will she, like, how does that trigger her in some sort of way? She could respond in a positive light, and maybe, I mean, I'm just randomly saying stuff, but maybe that puts her on a path of like social justice, or maybe
right.
she just becomes a recluse because of like, this is how the real world is.
Yeah.
Like, is that something you battle with in any capacity?
I think for the most part, both parents, me and her father, both kind of like are realists. So, like, we never want her to feel like she's living in a fantasy world and that the world is so rainbows and sunshines. She still has that. She's still like wants to play makeup, dress up, and like she still, believes in unicorns. And like I let her celebrate Halloween, versus like it's not like there's things that she can still dabble in, but I do want her to know that, we get back, when you don't use things, we're gonna separate them and we're gonna give them to Goodwill or we're gonna give them to another kid who needs them or we're not gonna overspend, you know. I want her to be financially literate. So we're gonna learn about savings accounts and like, you know, Roths and things like that. And
Mhm.
um, you know, those are things that I wish I would have started when I was 4 years old, because look at the economy that we're in right now. I would have been a millionaire.
Listen, if I would have bought some Apple stock in 1989, I'll be moving out here different. I'll tell you
Right,
that much.
right.
I'll tell you, Matt, that much.
You will see
Uh,
signs.
listen. I was too busy worried about damn Power Rangers. Now look at me. Um, and this is a loaded question and the two-part question, but how have you grown since the birth of your daughter? And what were some of like the biggest lessons that you learned through that time?
I feel like the growth would be more mentally. Like, I feel as though I'm more quiet. Like before, I used to be very like opinionative and outspoken and wanting to be in certain spaces, you know, out there. Now I'm just more like observant. Even though I always was, I could read the room, but I'm intentionally not saying anything, even when I feel like I should say something. You know, depending on the situation. Like if somebody's getting hurt and you know abused or something, I'm
Right.
gonna definitely step in. You know, as much as I can, but for the most part, I'm more to myself and like not trying to be outside. I have this quote where it's like, I'm gonna be outside, but out the way, you know, like that kind of thing. Like before it was like, oh, you know, I want to be seen, you know, I want, you know, people to approach me. Now it's like, I really don't want that. And what was the second part of the question?
Right. What were some of the biggest lessons that you learned?
Oh, lessons, like tribes. I feel like if you weren't really watering a lot of relationships prior to becoming a mother, then you shouldn't expect to have so many people behind you, you know, rallying you and helping you throughout the process. You know, I think that anybody who values friendships and relationships, they should continue to water and, you know, obviously tend to those things. But like, you can't expect it if it wasn't a priority. You can expect a big tribe if it wasn't a priority for you prior to having a child. And I say that because like my tribe is really small. Like for the most part, my tribe is like my family, my sisters, my mother. Like I have friends, but they were like outing friends, you know, it wasn't like friends that are gonna, you know, there's only a few that I can call and be like, hey, let's go to Costco and just like have a day just doing errands, you know, like there's not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of people that you could just kind of just do nothing and you know your kid could tag along and it'll be fine. So like stuff like that was a really big realization.
Interesting. Interesting. Typically, you hear that with men that do stick around, unfortunately, of like when they do realize that they're about to be a parent, that's when things start to like slow down and put things in their perspective of like, oh, okay, like shit is real now. Like I gotta be a man. Like I gotta take care of my family. It seems like that was kind of sort of similar of like, yeah, I'm gonna be outside. I'm gonna be, at this spot. But now it's like, oh nah, I need to be in places of substance. I don't need to draw attention to myself. Like the energy that I draw in is also the energy that I bestow upon my child. So I can't be bringing negative energy towards her. So
Right.
is my comparison correct, or am I just making stuff up?
No, it's true because like, you know, the spaces that I would partake in, you know, you're not gonna find like people that are thinking like that, you know, they're kind of just a moment type of thing. And you're not gonna find people who you're gonna have lifelong. Some you do meet some, you know, but it's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just knew like, all right, if I want to make friends and if it's gonna be of substance, it's definitely gonna be in places where it's not like about the usual outings or whatever.
Okay. And how old is your daughter again?
She's 4. She just turned 4 in March. She was born 2020, the day we were locked down. The same day.
Uh, I was gonna say something, but I was like, you know what? Let me shut up.
And I think it was the perfect opportunity to have a child because it was like, okay, the world is stopped. Like there's nothing going on. I'm not missing out on anything. My maternity leave was so smooth, and it was just like,
Interesting.
um, and I had it to myself. I didn't have people visiting me, even though I wanted people to visit me, and that also delayed a lot of friendships because it was like you can't see me, and I
Mhm.
haven't seen you since 2020. So it's like I understand that it was because a lot of things happened, but at the same time, if you want to, you would. You know what I'm saying? So like there are people who did make it their initiative to be like, yo, like she's solid, like I want to build a friendship with her. Shout out to, everybody who has and is still there and anybody that I meet along the way.
Did you? Because I asked you your daughter's age because I'm trying to like doing like a timeline in my head. Because I was just having a conversation with a friend about this of like the pressures that women feel deal with in terms of like, oh, you're of age, like you're supposed to have a kid, like your biological clock is ticking. All of the, did you feel any of those sorts of pressures, like especially when we're talking about families from immigrant families and that sort of perspective because they're used to like once you reach a certain age, like this is what you do. So did you feel that as well, or it's kind of wasn't as present in your family?
Well, when I found out I was pregnant, I was 25. So I gave birth when I was 26. And I feel like, damn, like this is like, I'm in my 20s. Like this is smack in the middle of my 20s. I was just like getting a taste of living on my own. And it was just like, it happened so quickly. I didn't even get to experience living on my own for, let's see, 17, 18, 19. So only like 4 years living on my own, and then boom, became pregnant, and it was just like, all right, well, I have to make a decision,
Mm-hmm.
knowing what I know, the facts of how this is going to change me and the person involved, and I made the decision to have the baby, and forget where I was going with that.
That's the second time. That's the second time that happened.
What was I going to
Yeah, like
say?
I was
The
essentially
question.
asking like, did you feel? I was essentially asking like, did you feel any pressure from like
Oh, okay, so
families or
yeah, so
anybody
like
else?
there wasn't like my mother wasn't telling us to have children. Like she wasn't like, oh, I
Got
want to be
you.
a grandma, Like if anything, she was the type to be like, oh, if you have a child, you gonna take care of it. Don't think that I'm gonna be grandma of the year, because she likes to go, she likes to be outside more than I like to be outside.
Listen,
And so like it was always, if anything, I feared becoming a mother because it was like, damn, like if my mom's not gonna help me with this baby, then who's gonna help me with this baby? And so when I finally did, get pregnant and I told my grandmother, she's like, oh, you should, your mom would be so excited. I told my grandmother first and then I told my mom and she was happy, she wasn't upset and everybody was happy. Everybody was like pushing, like I didn't want a baby shower. I didn't want a maternity picture shoot. I just was like, this is too much. But everybody's like, no, you have to do it. I'm gonna book it. I'm gonna set it up. And it was like, all right, cool. So, and then like eventually, I was like, all right, cool. Like this is cool.
yeah, that's interesting because that's not really common. Like you hear from other people, it's like once your parents get to a certain age, it's like, yo, time's ticking. Like, what type of time you on? Like, I was just telling the same friend, my father had went to Canada sometime last year, and like all my cousins up there, they're all single, and they're like around my age, maybe older, and like nobody got kids, nobody's doing those sorts of things, and like not necessarily taking the next step in life because you could still have a fruitful life without having a child, but like nobody's taking that sort of measure, and I think it's jarring for that generation because that's what they're used to, that's what they're taught of. Like once you establish yourself, you have some level of foundation, that's your time to just be out here just doing god knows what until you get one. And it's like, because like you mentioned, you was in the middle of your 20s living your best life. You didn't necessarily, you was just in the beginning of enjoying your youth, enjoying your freedom outside of your parents' home, of like experiencing life. And I don't know about most 20-year-olds, but when I was 20, when I was 23, 24, 25, I wasn't making no real money. So it's like, how much was I really enjoying my life? I was enjoying my life to a certain extent,
Right.
but it's not the same way I could possibly enjoy my life in my 30s making substantially more money. So it's like, for that to just happen like right in the middle of you, on the beginning of like experiencing your freedom and experiencing your youth, I can imagine like how jarring that is, and how much our parents could be disconnected from that, because it's just, that's how they're taught of like, which is funny because if I'm doing the math in my head correctly, I think my parents had me in their early 30s.
Oh,
So the
okay.
fact the fact that they've been on my ass is kind of funny, but that shit's not happening.
Yeah.
Anyways, I
And
don't
like
have.
you know what's so funny though? Like I want to also add it to that because I remember like I wasn't really telling a lot of people I was pregnant. I was just kind of like letting people see me pregnant, and like only the people that like I felt like I had a close relationship with, I'd be like, hey, like I'm like gonna have a baby, and I had this conversation with actually the last person I had my podcast episode with. When I told him about it, he was like, "Oh, so like, what made you like just decide like, okay, like you're gonna have a kid?" And I'm like, you know what? I had a good run. Like I had a good run, and I was also going through like a spiritual and like religious transformation and journey, and I just felt like it was just like God called me to become a mother at the point, and I was just like, you know what, like I can't have an abortion. Like it was just not in me to do. And like shout out to anybody who has, it's your body, your choice. Like I'm not the type of person who's gonna like shame you, you know, but for me it was just like, yeah, I knew I was gonna be a single mother, but at the same time I knew that I had like people in my corner who were gonna help me out, even if it was small. I had so many people pour into me around that time, churches, the people who were in my community, you know, like they really showed out, and I felt like, you know, God was showing like I made the right decision. So at the end of the day, you know, anybody who's listening to this who's like contemplating who doesn't want to have children, like it's okay. You don't have to have children. Like I used to say that I didn't want to get married, you know, and like hopefully I do one day, but you know, if it doesn't happen, I'm not gonna like slit my wrist
Why?
about it.
What? Yeah. Why would you say that? What was your reasoning behind that
You
at
know
that
what's so
time?
funny? It was a sociology class, AP sociology class in high school. I think I was a junior, and the professor was, I still remember, he was just like, "Oh, so like, what are your thoughts on marriage?" He asked the class, and I was like, "Oh, it's just a contract. So, like, people are just like in it for business." And like, this is me in high school. I thought this way, and I kind of like still feel that way about marriage, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And so, you know, if it happens that way, that's cool because I'd like to marry rich, but. It's about love and like you know we're in this together building and all that. I also believe in that too. Like I believe in getting it out of the mud together, but at the same time, like when you pour into people in that way, in that manner, especially like me, I feel like I'm so like passionate and like just so attentive and like I want you to win, and then for somebody to just kind of like back out after they kind of reach their success, you know, it's just like damn, like, do I want to be hurt like that too? So
Mm.
it's something else, you know, that we could talk
Yeah,
another topic about.
that's yeah. Yeah, that's another conversation. Like, it's funny how many of the things that we're discussing, I literally just had a conversation with a friend about the same sort of like ideologies of
Marriage.
I'll share this. I'll try to make this as brief as possible, but I had like shared this video that I found on TikTok on my Instagram of like this girl saying like how she separates the ideas of love in comparison to romance. So she looks at romance separately. And initially when I looked at it, when I saw it, I thought of it, her message or her statements, an extension of the ideology of like your soulmate doesn't necessarily have to be a romantic partner. It could be a friend, it could be a family member, it could be a loved one. Like, soulmates don't have to be romantic. But I remember when I posted it, a good friend of mine, shout out to you, Chechi, who was on the very first episode, she messaged me And she was like, yeah, like a lot more women are drawing that sort of conclusion because of the trauma that they are experiencing with men. So why would I want to indulge in another romantic relationship when all my past has just been guy after guy mistreating me, or I'm, like you mentioned, I'm building him up, I'm pouring into him, and then once he reaches a certain status, he just dips out or does whatever. So it's just interesting how so many different conversations that I have, or social media videos that I come across, and how they all like intertwine in that regard. But that's all the questions that I have for you. I do have a rapid fire section that we'll do right now.
Okay.
So do your best job. I believe in you. I believe in you. I believe you're gonna be able to do this.
All right.
So we'll knock this out. We'll knock this out and we'll get out of here. Um, what's one life hack that isn't spoken enough about, or isn't necessarily considered a life hack, but it's a life hack to you?
Life hack.
Let
I
me
feel
know
like
if you need some.
I I don't have this. I don't do this, but I think that I'm gonna start doing this, having a potty in your car. For the people
Having
who
a
like a potty, like a portable potty.
oh,
I think it's
okay.
important, especially with having children. Like I think even with yourself, like sometimes you go out with your friends, you have to pee, but you're in the middle of fucking highway, and it's like, all right, let's just be in a porta potty that's portable inside your car.
I feel like that's something Amazon would have in some
They
sort of
do.
capacity. So, okay, and that's a different one. I've gotten mind your business. I've gotten accountability, but mobile porta potty. Hey, you're one of a kind. One of a kind. Okay, if you're stuck somewhere for 24 hours or whatever, what is the one book, TV show, or movie you would have to have with you?
Bible. I carry that like I carry lip gloss these days. Um,
Okay.
TV show, Californication. I like that show a
Okay.
lot. I can
Never
watch
saw it.
that
Never
over
saw
and
it.
over again. And you
Okay.
said movie?
Yes, movie.
Movie. I like The Outsiders. Have you
Never
ever
seen
heard of The
that.
Outsiders? It's like it's based on
It
a book
sounds
as well. I forget who the author is, but it's a really good
it
movie.
sounds familiar. Yeah, it sounds familiar, but I haven't watched it. I need to create some sort of graphic so I could group together everybody after every episode. Everybody's rapid fire answers. I might
It's an old
indulge.
movie, so
Is it black and white? If it's black and
no.
white, I'm oh okay. Oh, if it's black and white, I was gonna tell you straight up, I ain't watching that shit. Okay. What's one restaurant that everyone should go to, and what is the dish from that restaurant that you recommend?
Mm. If anything, it would be like a Spanish restaurant. And
That's fine.
I grew up in, well, I used to serve at this restaurant. It's called Surrender Cafe. A little plug for them in Woodbridge, New Jersey. And I like their burrito rico. It's a burrito that they make, but it's like Puerto Rican food. So their take on a Mexican burrito. And I usually do it with chicken.
Mm.
It's really good.
I don't think they deliver to my home, but I'll make an effort to try to be over there if I'm ever in that area.
Yeah.
Okay. I hope I get a different answer this time because I've had like thus far I haven't had a male on my show yet, but I've gotten the same answer multiple times. I love y'all, but y'all gotta switch it up. Um, what is a wine or a drink that you suggest someone should try?
Well, I like wine. I like Barcelona. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but
Okay.
they're red. Like they don't really have like a Cabernet or it's like it's a Moscato brand. So I don't know if their red is technically like a Pinot Noir or something like that, but I like their Moscato. And they have like this new, they do like the spritzers in the cans now, and there's like
Mm-hmm.
this lychee Moscato concoction that they made. It's so good. I recommend that. Drink wise, I'm a Cosmo girl or like
Okay.
martini
Whew.
type of chick.
Okay. Because I gotten this is episode 7. I've gotten like at least 3 to 4 spicy margs, and I'm
Oh
like, yo,
yeah, I'm
can
surprised
y'all
you didn't
can
get
you
like a lemon drop. That's the girls' favorites too. Lemon drop.
No, nobody said lemon drop yet. If I had, if I had, should I say this? If I had white people on this show, I'm sure I would have got mad espresso martinis because I know The
I haven't
espresso
had one till
martini.
this day. Have you?
No, I'm not a big espresso guy. Like
Mm,
I'll indulge, but yeah, I wouldn't think to have coffee in my alcohol.
right.
But maybe, who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Also, like I'll drink almost anything. So it'll be funny to me when, like, even though there's not really how can I say this? There's really no sexual identification when it comes to, oh, this drink is for women, this drink is for men. But it'll be funny to me, like I'll go somewhere to go eat and I'll get a cocktail and you have no idea what glass the shit is gonna be in. And then put it in some like fancy little glass. I'm like, yo,
With like
fam,
glitter on
like,
the rim and like a cute
yeah,
little.
it's like, what we doing? What we doing? I just saw the fruits and I got excited. Like that's all I was looking for. Now you got me, now you got me out here acting like an Instagram influencer. Like what's going on
With your
here?
hoochie daddy shorts and all that.
Listen, summer's around the corner. Summer is around the corner. Y'all see me? I'll be on the Stairmaster for a reason. I'll be on the Stairmaster for a reason. What's one song that represents your childhood, one song that represents your 20s, and one song that represents where you're at right now?
Childhood, yeah, I would have to say something Spanish. So definitely like Raulín. He's a Spanish artist. I wouldn't say a specific song, but like also I would say Romeo Santos or like Aventura as well. One of their
Makes
songs.
sense. Makes sense. Staying loyal.
For 20s, is that the next
Yes.
category? 20s, I would say like a Party Next Door song. Like I was really into Party Next Door. So I would be like
Okay.
Belong to the City would be like one of the songs that I would say like would be my 20s theme music.
I belonged to the city before you came a mom. That's crazy. And then
And
one song that
now
represents you now.
what's the I don't want to be I was gonna say some sexy red shit.
Ain't nothing wrong with that. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Listen, I think there
Like Rich
is.
Baby Daddy. Rich Baby Daddy, yeah, like
I think that, yeah.
yeah, I would say Rich Baby Daddy.
I don't think there's anything wrong with having a level of appreciation for music that you don't relate to. So, like, if I'm in the gym and if you listen to my workout playlist, there is mad gangster street shoot 'em up type music on my workout playlist because it just creates that energy. I have no interest of being in the streets in any capacity.
Right.
I am always on the sidewalks. So I don't think there's anything wrong for like liking an artist like a Sexy Red or I don't know, a Lotto or a
Mm.
Glorilla. Like they all make great music. Like it's all
Yeah.
about the energy and the vibe. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
I just think that
Um,
it's dope that like growing up, you see this hood rat activity and it's like, oh, it's looked down upon. And now it's like glorified. Well, it's always been kind of glorified in the industry, but now it's just like
right.
on a level where it's more like simplicity. Like she's not like BBL'd up, and she's not like showing off too much, but at the same time, she's talking all that crazy wild shit. And it also goes back to like just being from Jersey and Jersey club music. There was a lot of music where it was like, hit that ass from the back. I don't know if you're familiar, but there's a lot of like, songs that I would used to dance to
Listen,
growing up,
I
and it's
know.
like sounds
Listen,
familiar.
I know we spoke a little bit about music from back home. If you want to listen to toxic music, listen to music from any of the Caribbean islands. That is toxic to the T.
I think
To the
the
T.
Jamaicans take it though with their soca and all that.
I
That music be
I
like,
don't want to
oh,
compare. I don't want to compare nobody. All I'm just saying, like when you really sit down and listen to it, it's like you said what?
right, no, it's
Poom
dope.
poom what? Yeah, they be wilding out here. They be wilding out here. But that's it for the rapid fire section.